guys, Brent Porcio, TopVelocity.net. Excited today. We got a great presentation we wanted to bring to y'all. YouTube and Instagram with the armcare.com group. We got legendary Ryan Croton, PhD. We got Jordan, I'm not going to say your last name.
Close enough, Osigaro.
Osigaro. So with armcare.com, they wanted to show us everything about it, why you need it, why it's so important to the game and keeping you healthy. Y'all take it away.
Awesome. Listen, I'm super excited being here, watching Brent put his education on. The one thing I want to do is actually meet the skeleton because I think it's a great prop. His name's Jimmy. I don't know if you got the name from Brent, I'm sure he's talked about it, but I also got to recognize his man Alex who's putting up this production. There is so much that goes into what Brent does. He's a hard worker, and he puts a lot of great content out. But my basic specialty is in elbow injuries. And a lot of people in the world, they focus on the shoulder, but in baseball, we're having way more elbow injuries than we are the shoulder, okay? And it comes with velocity enhancement. And the one thing that I love here at Top Velocity is that they're using our product. They're making sure they're assessing fatigue in their athletes. They're making customized programs. They got a ton of key performance metrics to ensure that the athlete does gain velocity, but they also stay healthy. That's the thing. People might not know this, but biomechanically, 1 mile per hour, you increase, you got an increase of load by 1 unit. And you combine that by thousands of pitches over the course of the season, you're putting like 1,000 or 2,000 Newton meters of load on the elbow. So it's important to be able to monitor. That's what we do. I mean, our motto is throw fuzz, but my particular saying is strength matters most. Strength matters most. We got to worry about strength first, then mechanics. I'm going to go to a little bit of anatomy because I love this. When you look at elbow injuries, you got to understand a couple things about the elbow, and it's kind of tough to turn his shoulder, but this bump here is called your medial epicondyle. It's a real big word, but what happens is you got your UCL that attaches from the medial epicondyle to this part on the ulna, and we call this the ulna. The ulna is the bone side of your pinky, this inside part of your pinky, and what happens, what causes stress to the UCL is this opening. If you imagine your elbow's like a hinge, like a door, imagine you're pulling up on the door as it's bending and extending. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put tension on that thing. And the muscles that overlay the elbow are your forearm flexors and your pronator. And the one thing we test is the flexor digitorum superficialis. That's the FDS, okay? And that muscle helps our fingers flex as well. Our forearm flexors, they help our wrist and our fingers flex, and we test with these 2 fingers. So a full hand grip strength test doesn't necessarily give you the right information about elbow health. And you got to think about it too. When I hold a baseball, I got 2 fingers on top, a thumb on the bottom, and when you get to the maximum part of your layback, where the highest torque is, you're bending the elbow the most, we need to have strength in those muscles. That's what's keeping the ligament healthy. So, you know, as I get back into maximal external rotation, okay, you can see that I'm going to have some bending. The arm actually stops when we're going to layback, and we need to have control of the forearm because what happens then is that you're going to put that stretch on your ligament. This is why we've got to have strong forearm muscles. It's shielding the ligament, and that's one of our tests that we do with armcare.com. So it's really good to have this anatomy. The other thing too that we see when you go to maximal external rotation, got to get this guy in the right place here. I'll turn him over. When we get to maximal external rotation, the wrist position can change from pronation to supination, okay? And you can actually get more range supinated. This means like I have my hand turned up, okay, opposed to pronated, turned down. And the reason being is you're going to tighten up your bicep. Your bicep's going to be more contracted, and if it's not in a relaxed, loose state, which it is when you're in a supinated position, you won't get as much layback. But when we get to that layback position with a supinated wrist, that also can create a little more stretch, a little more opening on the elbow. So it's important why we got to monitor strength. And there are connections, and I'm going to go through this at certain points in our presentation that we're giving today. We're giving an arm care performance clinic. I'm going to do some exercising as well. I'm going to show you some drills later on in the day, but we have to make sure the shoulder is really strong because when that arm's laying back, especially if we're doing a really high velocity layback speed, you know, if you're using weighted balls, and some guys like to do reverse throws, okay, that means that that arm is hurling back at a faster rate, okay? It's going backwards at a faster rate, and if you think of your arm like a catapult, you're pulling that thing back quickly. You got to have the strength in the hinges to handle it, and that's what happens with the shoulder, okay? And when I go into this this education, a lot of baseball players, at least at the pro level where I've been there, they have tremendous strength on the backside of their shoulder. And it does make sense to a degree because when they release the ball, those muscles at the back, they got to keep the shoulder in its socket. All these muscles compress the shoulder joint when it's accelerating. It's got to stop. There's a point in the delivery, actually, where you're releasing the ball that your shoulder is in a fixed position to create the friction, to create spin, but those muscles have to be strong. Okay, that's our support of that group. But one of the other things that we need to know is that when we're laying that catapult back, we have to have strength on the inside, our internal rotation strength, okay? And it actually has to have strength while it's lengthening. You gotta think, if my arm's going back, the only way to stop it are the muscles on the front. And so if you've got a program that is highly focused on the posterior side of the shoulder, and you're not assessing all the different muscle groups, we talked about the FDS, our pinch grip, that muscle goes right over the UCL. If we're not looking at all that, we're gonna create extra stretch on our ligaments and our passive structures. So it's important that you have a very, very, very individualized program, okay? And you need to do that with assessment. I'm playing this up on the board behind me. It's an amazing setup. It's great for education because there's a projector and you can see this really clearly. But I want you to take a look at what this technology is about. For a very low price point, you have your clinic in a case. And what's good about facilities, especially like looking at TopVelocity, they work with a ton of athletes. And if they're not here and they're away from you, you can at least stay up on throwing arm strength changes and fatigue. That's super important. And it can be done anywhere. And you get the report, and then you know how to individualize. I always say that generalization equals hospitalization. I think like 99%, maybe even 100% of injuries are caused by not having an awareness of the data and not creating customized programs. A lot of the times, you'll see when you go into certain areas where they train, not here, that athletes are doing all the same things, okay? And it's good for some athletes, it's bad for others. You might overtrain some, you might undertrain some, where we need to make sure our programs fit the athletes, okay? And they don't have to fit our programs. That's huge. I'm gonna go to the whiteboard real quick, okay? One of the things that people always ask me is they say, you know, what is the biggest cause of injuries in baseball, okay? And it's quite simple. When we look at the metrics, you ask certain people to say, okay, what's important to pitching? K9, FIP, WHIP. They throw out all different types of acronyms, stuff grades, ball flight characteristics, spin axis. You hear it all. But the most important metric to me, the primary one, is innings pitched, because when you get to a certain level, you need those pitchers to be able to stay on the field to win games. But when I dive down and I want to look at how efficient pitching works, the first place I look is not biomechanics, and I have a biomechanics background. It is this metric right here, pitch efficiency, PE. And some people don't know what that means. You hear efficient delivery, people talk about it. Is it visual? Is it if the guy doesn't get tired when he throws? There needs to be a definition. So for me, what makes really great pitchers, ones that exist in the game for a very long time, they have to have a concentrated effort on pitch efficiency. Okay, pitch efficiency is basically pitches per inning. I'll say it again, pitches per inning. We know to be a successful pitcher, you need to be in games. We can't look at baseball saying we're going to take away from this player. Okay, you don't want to take the workload away from the player. You want to be strategic. But one thing that gets them going on year after year, making their starts, making money when they want to go into either getting a scholarship or going to play at the professional level, is being able, okay, to do more with less. Being able to throw less per inning, okay, but compete in more games, more game appearances. That is huge. All right, so that is a real big factor for me as far as an efficiency grade. And remember, I'm focused on innings pitched. That's just me. I'm a health guy. People ask me, what do I care about more? I think velocity is huge for competitive opportunity. But if you're not on the field, or you're going to be able to play for a long time in your career, you need to stay on the field, okay? And the other thing that people don't know is what's the predictor of surgery, all right? Surgery just doesn't happen. You just don't get an exploding elbow all of a sudden, okay? It comes from micro damage, damage that occurs over time that doesn't get healed, okay? And so what we need to do is we need to prevent the primary injury. Strength matters most. We need to keep our ligaments healthy, our passive structures healthy. We have to focus on strength because the secondary injuries, okay, those ones lead to more catastrophic results, like having a surgery. Now, if you have a surgery and you go into a revision, all right, especially for the elbow, your rate of return is going down. Here's the problem with the world of baseball, is that in the medical community, they are advancing at a much faster rate than we are at the preventative community, okay? So our surgical approaches are becoming so good that players are getting back at about a 90% level. But the thing is, you're gonna be missing tissue that God gave you. And if you have a surgery at a young age, let's say you're 18, you got a Tommy John surgery, people don't know this, on average, they only last about 4.5 years. They really do. The ones that you guys see that are successful, the major league players, there's been studies to show that major league players that have Tommy John surgery, they have a longer outcome for their career, all right? The younger players, you don't hear about those guys because a lot of them get released when they have surgeries, okay? And a revision surgery is not something you want. Again, I'm gonna keep saying it. It is my motto. Everything I write newsletters for armcare.com, strength matters most. We have to prioritize it. Now, I got to tell you about why guys get injured, okay? I told you pitch efficiency is important to preventing it, but I'm going to shoot a slide up on the board, up here on the screen. If you can see it, you're going to look at your eyes like dead beat in the middle of this thing, all right? Fatigue is the biggest risk factor. And there's one study, they looked at it in youth athletes, but I think it's even more as you get to professionals, is throwing under a state of fatigue or potentially a sore arm. That is a big issue. Now, when you go around the wheel, I've been researching this stuff since 2006 when I started my PhD program at the University of Buffalo. And I looked for studies that had actual good data to show a difference between healthy and unhealthy pitchers, okay? I have a segment that I do on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn guy. This is all new for me on Instagram, where I talk about Armcare FX. It's a small, quick bite, 2 minutes long, but the FX is a play on word for effect size. So you can look through research, but there's one metric called the effect size metric, and it's the most important stat in science to show you how big a difference are there from two groups, all right? So I'm showing you here, from what I've read, the percentage of studies that I've read that have the highest effect size. So you go around the wheel. Range of motion. There's some effects there. About 15% of the studies that are out there show a pretty decent effect size, a big difference, okay? Workload scheduling, I've done a ton of it, okay? A ton of research there. And I will tell you, at the major league level, competitive pitch counts, they don't matter, all right? We didn't see anything. We did a long study looking at predictive element of competitive pitch counts. They weren't very strong, and they haven't been shown to be really effective in college. And one of the reasons being is that they are general, okay? They're general. How is it that Brent, Jordan, the guys in here who are starting pitchers, why do we always have 100 pitches? Why is that magical number, right? So they assessed it. They say, okay, well, if a pitcher's doing really well and they're throwing 15 pitches per inning, they get like 7 innings, that's a pretty good measure. That's not good enough. That's why I like strength matters most, because we need to know the arm strength, and we need to be able to individualize. Say it again. Individualization is more important than anything to prevent hospitalization. So this workload data and the way we're tracking pitches, it doesn't work. All right, that is not the killer. Now biomechanics, that's crazy. I know that's crazy. I went to school, I got an exercise physiology, a split PhD in exercise phys and biomechanics. My studies were mostly focused on biomechanics. All right? I don't love it for injury prevention. It is definitely involved in performance. Okay? You have to have certain biomechanical qualities to make you a really good player. Okay? But when it comes to injuries, everybody throws a different way. They all throw a different way. And when I was in professional baseball, we had unbelievable models. Jordan's at the side here, but I'm going to give him props. This guy had digitized, I don't know, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 pitchers over the course of his time with the Angels. And we really looked at some things. We created a model of how to draft a biomechanically optimal or effective pitcher. And this is based on databases of our own athletes and guys that were really excellent pro pitchers. Now what happened is we didn't draft people that had their hand underneath their elbow, okay, or that inverted W or L or whatever you want to call that position. We didn't even draft those guys, all right? But we had them in the organization. And the strange thing is that the inverted W guys were not on our injured list. They were not, okay? And the very clean mechanics, you know, balls in front of their body, you know, you get tons of milliseconds to see the ball. We had a ton of them. We had a lot of the guys that we took on that ended up on the injured list. That's quite frightening. So I had to dive to the data and say, hey, all right, we got a performance model. Yeah, we might have brought in some guys that are, you know, they fit that performance model. But again, innings pitched, that wasn't happening. A lot of guys had their careers cut short, and it's kind of unfortunate. But when it comes to health, and like I'm saying, it's the strength aspect. You know, some of these guys, there are a couple things. You get a player that is hand under elbow at weight-bearing foot flat. The one thing you got to look at is how long does that arm take while it's down, and then you have opening of rotation. That is a big issue. That's something that needs to be corrected, all right? But we need to fit our programs to those pitchers, because one thing that can happen, Jordan's over here, but he can attest, is we went to arm path right away for a lot of our pitchers. And when we changed arm path, guys, it put them at even more risk, you know. And so there's certain instances where you need to do that. It's kind of it's the lower end, at least from what I've seen. But if we created an individual process for that delivery, and everybody's got their own, we got to create our own arm care programs based on, you know, their arm slot, or if they're hand under elbow. This would be a guy that, you know, if my hand's got late timing, you got to think to yourself, is his layback going to be slow or fast? It's pretty easy. I'm moving this way, my arm's here, I'm opening early, my arm's got to be pretty rocket fast. And I showed you with our guy Jimmy, the skeleton, when the arm opens, right, that's going to put some more stretch on the UCL. So what do you do with that athlete? Okay, well, they need a little bit more eccentric internal rotation strength. They got to be able to brace that. The arm's got to be able to stop and lay back to not create a huge amount of bend with the forearm while it's rolling forward to put stretch on the ligament and the muscles. But they also have to have the FDS strength. This full grip strength, we get it in a lot of things. Gripping barbells, pull-ups. We need more finger strength. Can't stress it enough. Finger strengthening, finger flexion with these two fingers and thumb, really, really important. I'm going to go to another slide for you, okay? We got fatigue, weakness, compensation. This is a mechanism. So when we say mechanism, that is the process in how athletes get injured. I talked about strength matters most. Strength matters most means you're not going to be fatigued. That's the beginning of the cycle, all right? In the middle is weakness, so you get fatigued, your muscle strength is going to change, and then we have compensation, all right? So I'm going to go to my guy Jimmy, and what we might have is, you know, arm doesn't go that high because the scapula doesn't move on this guy, unfortunately. But over time, what might happen is, okay, he gets the maximal external rotation, now he's not at that nice 90-90 position, his arm starts to fly out a little bit there. He's a little bit fatigued, okay, so he's made a change. Or, you know, what can happen is he might pinch in, okay? So he might actually flex closer to the, he might bring the ball closer to the ear. There's a lot of things that can happen. The arm lowering, the rib cage, early opening, okay? Not catching up, the arm lagging too far behind. Those aspects are gonna cause increased loading on this UCL, right here. It's gonna open up that joint, okay? The door's bending, you're pulling up on the hinge even more. It's gonna create the compensation. How do you block it? That's key. Right there. Okay, the arm care device, it is in the platform, it's a real simple explanation. This is a cost-effective way a player can put this in their bag and identify their fatigue. Coaches can follow it and they can understand how I'm going to make individualized adjustments because you're breaking the cycle. And you know when you have to recover an athlete or when you need to dial up or dial down. That's huge. We need to be able to have that. That is a really important feature. And right now, most people are walking around not knowing how fatiguing their throwing programs are. They're not knowing in their athletes where their muscular deficiencies are. And the athletes are going into a gym and it's just a whiteboard. So Alex, Brent, Jordan, you know, the guys that are in here training super hard. Yeah, here's the device. Thanks, Brent. They're going in there. Everybody's doing the same thing. Okay, and it's real simple. You wear it on your wrist. You press. I know I had the video, but I mean, look at this. This case goes in a backpack, your bag. You're in a hotel room. There's really no excuse, in my opinion, anymore to write generalized arm care programs. There is no excuse anymore with the amount of data that's in baseball and the affordability of some lower level technologies that give you good insights to not be evidence-led or data-informed in what you do. If you're winging it, you know, some people out there, they have great art in their practice of coaching players, but I'm a scientist, so one of the things I want to be able to get to this community is the concept that, you know, strength matters most and the tools are there, let's use them. All right, so let's see how easy this is to use. Very simple, okay? You have three big areas of a throwing program, right? So first there's the pre-throwing exam that we have. That's just getting the athlete ready for the exam and getting some activation. And it looks like this. The first thing is the athlete walks in, all right? And that's a process in itself. Athlete can't come in with a bad mental state. You're not gonna have a good day. So one thing that they got here going on at TopVelocity, Brent's very connected with his athletes. He's a big-time business owner, but he knows his guys. And they come in, they communicate, they can tell him, hey man, I'm hanging today. There's a lot of information, okay, coming in the door. He's got to get them mentally ready. But then you go into the plan, all right, he's on the bullpen, and these dudes here, they don't throw slow. If you are living under a rock and haven't seen the videos that have been put out by this company, there's something wrong. You know, there's a radar gun in most of them. You're going to see big velo gains. The wall here has got some of the guys that have been showcased at the velocity gains they made. It's tremendous. But having that high intensity training day, you got to be able to screen. That's huge. So the guy comes in and they do some type of activation. Everybody has a certain way of getting the arm ready, okay? And we have opportunities to use our app to do that, or you can be very versatile and do it on your own. But here's the key. It's our arm primer, all right? Now, our arm primer is a 1-minute test every day that allows you to make an adjustment to workload. It's our screen. So you're wearing it, you're in a half kneeling position, you're pressing against something immovable. That's our XL test. You're wearing it on your wrist. It's a decel test in the position that you release the ball. That's essential because, again, we want to be specific to the athlete. We got to be biomechanically specific in what we do. We need to know where the strength lies. If I'm a side armor and I'm looking at my strength up here, and nothing against certain tests that are out there, but there's one that's very interesting using a force plate called an ASH test. But those tests are at a predetermined angle. So that means the athlete's got to be overhead at certain angles until they might reach a spectrum. But we need to give the freedom to be able to test anywhere, not using an expensive force plate, using a tool like this, where you can get the best information how the athlete throws. That is huge. So we do that arm primer. I'm going to get into it a little bit later on in the presentation. We might have to chop this up because this is going to be a long presentation. But the arm primer is being able to press, okay, maximally in the warm-up. And why do we do that? I think of it like jump starting your battery. All right, your battery's running, maybe it starts to slow down, it's losing juice, and then bang, you do your arm primer. That is what we call potentiation. Big fancy word by like amplifying the neural activity, the muscle contraction. What happens is when you do this maximal press, all right, in the arm, it dumps a whole bunch of calcium in your muscle cells, all right? Now the calcium are the things that allow your fibers to bind. So when you get a ton of calcium in your muscles, you got all these different fibers that are binding, okay, that help you contract. And that means when you're moving at high speed, you got more force, and more force is going to give you more power. So we do this early. The secondary element of this that's so important is the exam. All right? We got to actually look at the muscle contributions. Unlike the ASH test is a straight arm test like our standing XL and decel, but we got to decompose the strength. Is it the internal rotators, the external rotators, the forearm, our scaption test? We got to know these things, so we got to do an exam, all right? And then once we get there, hey, that data's in an app, we got a dashboard, real simple. This is where the coaches take over, all right? The tech's giving them insights. You know, this doesn't mean your medical guy or your strength guy goes out on the field and says, hey, coach so-and-so, I think we need to do this. No, the coaches have this data on their app, on their phone, they're on the field, they're in the weight room, in the gym, wherever the athlete is, and they're being dynamic. And they're being dynamic in their program before the dynamic warm-up. You can go to the athlete. You know, one thing that bothers me, this is kind of an aside, it bothered me in professional baseball as a strength and conditioning professional. Pitching coaches, you're listening, please do not walk on the field when the athlete is warming up with the group and disrupt his mental focus for the day, okay? It irritates the strength coach, and it does irritate the player because now all of a sudden the group he's with are ahead of him. He's been thinking about things. We need to use our warm-up to get mentally prepared, okay? We need to use the warm-up to be mentally prepared. So by the time the exam's done, which takes 6 minutes, so 1 minute here, then we do our exam in multiple positions. Now it's 6 minutes. That data is right on the phone. The player's in there getting a drink, putting the uniform on, getting ready to go out, and the coach already has it. Guy comes out before dynamic warm-up. Hey, we had a 40-pitch pen today. You're going to throw X, Y, and Z. You're supposed to throw at max capacity. We're going to go to a 15-pitch pen. You're going to throw changeups and fastballs, and I'm going to keep the radar gun on you. We're going to dial it down for today. This isn't a day that I want to work on a fatigued arm, okay? Some cases, strength so bad, guy loses more than 8 pounds of strength, okay? In a muscle group, that's a lot of strength. 8 pounds is a lot of strength to lose. That coach might just punt the day and say, hey, let's do it tomorrow. So it makes them dynamic, okay? So now you get to the post throw, and I'm going to end after this slide for this particular segment, but the post throwing exam is the critical feature. I'm going to put something else on the board in a little bit that you're going to be able to follow. Why? Why is this post throwing exam important? Now in professional baseball, you're not really well staffed, okay? And players, you got your medical staff on the field, you got your strength coach working with somebody, and they got really expensive equipment. It's not conducive to doing a post-throw test. But what's important, the player does this. We're giving the player ownership. Why do we have to handhold every single player in the game? Especially when they get to a major league level, they should have a process, and we need to get this to our high school kids and even younger to be able to develop that process, but they have to test after the game. And the reason why is you need to know how fatiguing was the workload on their arm. So when they throw 115 pitches in a game and they come out and their strength is actually 10% higher than baseline, they actually got potentiated, hey, that kid's nervous system, real good. That's, we don't need to take away from him. We're going to keep testing it, but he's showing us he's not fatigued. Other guys, they come out throwing that, they might lose 20% of strength. It's like, whoa, that level is not maybe optimal, and comparing it to performance as well. Now, if they're throwing 115 pitches in the game, they're going deep in the game. They should be. But you need to assess this. And then after that, we get to the training and recovery. And we're going to do some training exercises and some things today. I'm going to be working with Brent. And that's a process. Player leaves, okay? And now that your recovery process also starts to continue. And those are behavioral, okay? Like you get your soft tissue work. You go home, even though you're doing foam rolling or some of the other soft tissue release in your training session at the end, you need to continue that way of mobilizing tissue and getting yourself to relax when you go home. Hydration, that's huge. You're gonna like, this is hot in here. I mean, we're in Louisiana. We're in Covington, Louisiana, and this location is on Hard Hat Drive. That makes so much sense to me because these guys put in the work, but it's hot, all right? They're gonna sweat a ton. There's some dudes in here we can't show you, they don't have shirts on, all right? But they're dripping wet with sweat. And they're gonna be losing a lot of body water. So one thing that the athlete can do is before they go to the training session, they go, okay, I'm gonna step on the scale. All right, I weigh 200 pounds. After the training session, they come over They stand on the scale and say, okay, well now I'm 198. Well, if you do the simple math, to get your body weight up, you got to drink about 2 pounds of water, all right, in flow ounces in bottles. So you need to go and hydrate. And then nutrition, we need to educate our players, even if they're overweight, all right, and they're competing and they're training in an environment like this, they need to have something ingested every 3 hours. And you think about this in a game, and I'm talking it's got to have the combination of protein, it's got to have a little bit of carbohydrates, some fat. Trail mix is awesome. I love it. Some guys even eat yogurt if they can handle it during games because it's easy to go down. But you need to have some type of nutrition because if you are going to be successful, you're going to lose steam, you're going to burn calories, you burn even more in the heat. You know, you're going to be burning a lot more, and you don't want to be dehydrated. These foods have salt in them, okay? The salt in the food is what's going to allow you to retain water, stay hydrated. And I always say to athletes, hey, what's easier to rip? It's either a steak in a package or beef jerky. Dry beef jerky, obviously, you can rip like paper, okay? And so hydration is huge. And then you got to go into a mental state of relaxation. One of the things that we talked about at Louisiana Tech, I was just there, brilliant people over there. They had an intern, or she was a grad student who will be doing some interning. She's into music, okay? And that's something too that players have to understand in their mental state, what calms their body, right? If I go home after a training session here where they probably got disturbed and all the angry music and the books playing here because these guys throw hard, I got to go home. I got to take that huge dump of adrenaline and put myself to sleep. So they have to figure out what is my relaxation. What am I going to listen to? Be EDM for some people, some classical music, but you got to put yourself in the optimal recovery state. That's all I got for this segment. Thanks for listening.
All right, guys. If y'all have any questions, we'll take some questions. I don't know if they're going to have much, but if you're on Instagram, you're like asking questions. I think the questions you should be asking is around how the unit works with armcare.com, how it works with their app. Also, you know, any questions you have with things that you know, recommendations that Ryan can give you on a lot of the things he already went over as far as, you know, post prepping or pre-game throwing or pre-game assessments, post-game assessments. Any stuff like that would be good questions. Let's see if anybody gives it to us.
I threw a lot at you.
Yeah.
You know, this live thing's new for me.
Hey Ryan, can you touch a little more on the post-exam? Some examples.
Okay, yeah. So Jordan gave me a question of the post-exam. So, you know, I'm going to get into some visualizations of it, but the post-exam is very similar to the fresh exam. You're going to be able to train, you're going to be able to test in all different positions, and we're going to compare it to the baseline. Okay, so we get an average of when the athlete's in a recovered state, and we got to know, hey, his internal rotation strength is down, or his external rotation strength is down, or his scaption strength, where we push up on a wall, is down. Jordan's going to demonstrate some of this later on today, or their grip strength. And that's important too, because if I'm a strength coach, all right, and Brent's really multi-dimensional because he does the skill side and the strength side, this is allowing you to know what muscles really fatigue on this dude, right? If you've got a guy who's throwing a ton of split fingers, okay, and his forearm muscles are showing you a 20 or 30% decline in strength, well, you need to understand, like, this fatigue is an issue. There's got to be a training response to that to be able to handle it, whether you use fingerboards or something to develop strength to not fatigue is huge, because I put it up there, man. I put up fatigue as the enemy, and we can't tell fatigue unless we actually assess the throwing arm after the player throws.
What about, like, how long does it take to do an assessment with the unit
Okay.
to get some information?
Yeah. So, okay, so what I said is in the arm primer, that's a daily test. And that's important because it's only a minute, all right? That screen gives us a workload understanding. What do we need to adjust on the day that's right away, okay? Now it gets to an exam, which I call actually a test. So it's screen, test. Test is a weekly exam for me. We're just doing the throwing arm, okay? And that's 6 minutes. 6 minutes are gonna get both range of motion, we have an IMU in this, so that the athletes can actually show you what's the change in range of motion in the throwing arm, okay? And then, once they get the range of motion, they're gonna be able, okay, to test all those muscle groups to determine how are they changing from the baseline, Okay, and that's where we dissect all those strength measures, okay, in the test, and that's a weekly exam. We do those before bullpens, velocity days, okay? You can do them even game days for some guys that really don't look good on the bullpen day. You will really want to know to see if they've recovered. That's where we put, okay, that test, that fresh exam, and then we do that post-exam. Now, the third is what I call the full exam, and you do that monthly, okay? So you got your daily screen, you got your test, which is weekly, and then you get your monthly. Your monthly is testing both sides. A lot of people ask me, hey, why do you test the glove arm? When this is 6 minutes, why do you test the glove arm? And the reason being is that if you're seeing strength loss in not only your throwing arm, but also in your glove arm, that means that the athlete may be experiencing central nervous system fatigue. That means the whole entire nervous system from the brain level down to the spinal cord is affecting strength on both sides of the body. When you see it only on the throwing arm side, that's more peripheral fatigue. It's a little easier to remedy, okay, with recovery methods, rest. But when it happens where you have central nervous system fatigue, there is some process about your autonomic system that can affect how the body, the brain and spinal cord are contracting muscles and activating them. So you got to do that too. So the continuum is a test, that's the minute job with the arm primer, or pushing in, pushing back. The exam, which is going to give you, all the muscles, their fatigue levels on the throwing arm, and then you get the full exam where you get to see both. Okay, that's 12 minutes.
So I was asking about the Joe Beimel story.
Oh yeah, Joe Beimel, man. This is a great story. A lot of people might not know him, but he had a pretty solid major league career, okay? And he's got a couple facilities. I think, are they in Florida? California, yeah. So he's got a couple facilities, but he was training athletes, and he was looking for an edge, and he looked at this device, and he was out of baseball, 45, 44 years old, and he's training them, and he's realizing using this and creating the customized program, he's using handled bands, which I would love to get into later on, to develop strength. He's seeing big improvements. So he said to himself, I'm going to try this out. And he started following the program, using the app, using the training, and he also has great process for himself. But he actually went back in to professional baseball with the San Diego Padres, who unfortunately had a ton of injuries from Tommy John surgeries, and it gave him an opportunity as an experienced pitcher to get back in. But the cool thing was, I think he mentioned that when he was in a bullpen, no batter, he was throwing 3 miles an hour faster than what he was doing in a game. And that was basically remedying all the muscular deficiencies and imbalances that he had in his arm, okay? And it allowed him to make that to scale. He used it in the season. I mean, that's amazing. I'm not going to give you my age, but I'm not that far from him. To be able to be in professional baseball with kids that could probably be his son's age, it's pretty impressive what he was able to do. And that shows you can use that at any age. Man, there's a lot of men's baseball players out there. Imagine you have a rotator cuff surgery, when you have to go and do something at work, especially if you have a manual job and you have an arm injury, that's a problem, so you got to do everything possible to stay healthy. That's key.
So the most important aspect of it is health. I mean, obviously it's going to benefit velocity, but
this is interesting because this is kind of the conundrum. It's like, okay, well, if I'm healthier, generally, if you throw slower, it's harder to break you, okay? But that also affects competitive performance. So what we have is kind of the intersection of both. Our triangle, the things that matter to us, is health, velocity, and command. They're all wrapped in to arm strength. So that's huge. I know I'm talking about health. That's my interest. Most of the pitching group that we work with, they're looking at velocity, and we actually put out a guarantee. We're one of the only products that literally will give you every dollar you spent, you can send it back to us. If you're under 90 miles an hour, and in 10 weeks, you don't see a 4 mile per hour increase, you can give it back to us, and we'll refund you. Now, if you have surgery at any time where you're using our device and you're following along with our recommendations, every single dollar you spent, whether you've been with this for 5 years, 10 years, we're going to give it back to you, okay? You send us back the dynamometer, we're going to send it back to you. We believe in it that much. When I started, we had 500 athletes, and Jordan as well. We were grinding, man. We were grinding to get this message out, get people educated and understand how important this is. This gives us a little platform, Brent, so I'm super grateful, but we're now at 6,500. Okay, there's 6,500 athletes that are using this. You want to know how many athletes have actually communicated to us that they had an arm injury? 7. In typical research, 50% of all throwing athletes will see time loss. That's half. You look at your team, half of them are going to be out of a game. Okay, they're not going to play. So that's super huge. That's so important that we need to keep the kids on field. I got 2 boys. I was a pitcher. My story started because I almost had an avulsion fracture at 11 years old. I threw really hard. I was a heavy kid. And the parents actually wanted me to pitch in a higher level. They kept me at a lower level, and my coaches wanted us to dominate. So I threw all the time. And one day, I had this like white hot part of my elbow, and I couldn't bend it. So I don't know what I did. I was 11 years old. Went to the pediatric orthopedic surgeon. He took a look at it, and he's like, listen, there is a little hairline gap, that's your growth plate. He's like, your son's is starting to widen. Okay? We talked about this bump. It's kind of messed up here. This bump here, this medial epicondyle. All right, that's the last bone in your body to actually become physically mature. In most normal people, it's 17 years old where that bone is fused. Okay, so for a very long time, there's a big gap. The bone is going to rip right off his arm. I'm going to have to put screws in it. I'm going to fasten it. It's going to set him up for major problems when he gets older to play. And thank God I could hit, so I never pitched again. So that's real sad. I love pitching. I could never do it again after the age of 11. But I think about my boys, and if your parents watching this and you're thinking about your players or your coaches, you got to do this. This is preventative.
Hey Ryan, can I hop in and give some
Yeah, come on in.
examples there? Oh, did I get it?
You on mic?
Yeah, so to give some real world examples with that, I have a couple guys that I'm working with, and we have 2 guys that are going to be freshmen this next year coming up, and they're both roughly the same velocity. They're within like 25 days of each other on a birthday. One of them comes in, he throws 20 pitches. The other one throws 20 pitches in a sim game. One of them lost 18% strength, and one of them actually lost 0% strength. So one of those guys were actually undertraining. By looking at that post-throwing exam, we're able to know which one of these guys is able to handle more workload and which one needs to do a little less. We're able to allocate better development reps. That was one of the things we did with BioMetric. He was sending me text messages, phone calls, doing all these things. We're helping him guide his throwing volumes based on those pre and post exams, and it really skyrocketed for him. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that says he should be throwing harder at the end of his career than he did at the peak of his career, but he was doing it because he was monitoring that throwing. Not only that, but he was taking that data, doing stuff very similar to what they're doing here at Top Velocity, and dialing in a custom arm strength program. So not just doing the generalization equals hospitalization. Yeah. He was customizing his arm strength to maximize his performance. And then another thing on that with the elbow injuries. I had another kid who was playing for me, and we went into the summer. I really want these guys not doing a whole bunch of competitive aspects over the summer. I want them training. I want them getting better. I want them coming back bigger, stronger, more durable, working on pitch development, whatever that may be. And he said, no, I'm selling in. I'm going all out on the showcase scene. I'm going 100% in on it. About 6 weeks in, he shoots me a text. He goes, hey, I'm getting an MRI. I said, okay, let's come on in. Let's get you tested out. I want to know what your strength is. Let's see where you're at. He had a big strength loss, but it was nothing that I've seen in a surgery case before. So he gets his results back, just a ton of inflammation. Everything's good. So we were able to, if he was just testing regularly, if you're going to go in on that stuff, you need to have a good strength program guided by a competent coach that's going to help you maximize your performance and your health. You got to be able to do both.
Yeah, it's huge. This is why I love coming here. Okay, I've talked to Brent for a very long time. I talked to a lot of leaders in baseball. They're all amazing. They're all super intelligent. They all have great processes. They're getting results. But my goal is, and same with Jordan and our company, is to give them the resources they need so that players keep coming back. The average Tommy John surgery, that's my area, the elbow, it can take, at the major league level, almost 18 months. Okay, 18 months to rehabilitate. If you imagine your son or even your daughter who plays, and they have, a Tommy John surgery, okay, and they have it as a sophomore, well, you're kind of losing a lot of opportunity for development and opportunity to be seen. That's huge. That's why I say innings pitch is so important. That's the career element. And I will say this too. You want to be a Hall of Famer? Like, think about it. If you want to be a Hall of Famer, you got to be out there. You got to log innings. You got to aggregate data. If you want to be the best in the game, you got to play for a while. There's There's not very many players that played less than 10 years that are in the Hall of Fame as pitchers. There's maybe Sandy Koufax. There's not many of them. Okay, they're elite. But you need to be able to have that process so that the athlete can get what they want out of the game. They can see things. They can go to college. They can play indie ball. They can be drafted and signed. And the only thing that doesn't allow them to do that is if they actually don't play. And that happens with injury.
I mean, one thing that comes to mind on that is it's that you want the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment.
Yep.
And if you come to a place like a Top Velocity, you're probably going to get the pain of discipline, but you're going to get to keep playing. You're going to get your name up on this wall. You're going to keep pushing your development while doing it smart and monitored.
Yep. I mean, it's. Go ahead, Brent.
I'm just saying, when you're done, tell them how to find you, follow you, all those things.
Yeah. So you basically, I mean, it's in the name, armcare.com. Just go there. Our emails are easy, Ryan@armcare.com, Jordan@armcare.com. We put out so much on YouTube, okay? As you can see, I love to educate. Jordan loves to educate. We have mini lectures there. We have our Armcare Effects. Our mini lectures are called Armcare IQs. We have a lot of simple ways that you can see how to use the device. There's a lot of walkthroughs that you can see. Jordan does his Armcare segments that are really focused, really coach speak. I'm more on the strength coach, medical side of things, biomechanical realm. Jordan actually puts pieces together on how you would use this to coach and has great examples with his players. And we have courses. So some of these pieces are from our certification course. We have the Certified Armcare Specialist course. I think everybody should have this in high performance baseball to be an expert, because you may not want to use our training. And that's okay. You might want to just, hey, we're going to use the app as a diagnostic, but we are giving you all the tools, all the education necessary that you can create these individualized programs based on our data. All right, that's huge. It's something for everybody. We're building mini courses. There's just going to be a lot of information for you guys, and we're just very grateful to be here today because it's hard to get the message out. It really is, and Brent's one of the best in the game, and I love talking to him, and I'm so happy that he's, his staff is using this because their players are going to get results.
All right, let's end it.
Do you have water?
Yeah. Good kitchen.
Now, I know we talked about the affiliate thing
Can we
earlier.
keep doing some more? Yeah.
How would we set you guys up on that to get that out? Since I know you had us plug our stuff, I want to make sure you guys are getting. If someone buys off of that, I want to make sure you guys are getting.
We gotta make sure.
Yeah, we were just talking about once we build some traction with it, we can get. I mean, I think that's what I said initially. Let's just get it going, and then we can start moving in that direction. I would like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's an affiliate link y'all can give us or anything.
Yeah, I know we have one kind of